These are the Peshmerga front lines on the outskirts of Kirkuk. The militants are around a kilometre in that direction. Peshmerga forces say they moved into these areas only because Iraqi forces fled when militants attacked. After the financial crisis of 2008, the government said it would try and rebalance the British economy away from its dependence on financial services. The basic message coming out of there is that this is great, it props up the market for a little while, but over the longer term, there are still some real concerns about Spain and Italy. You know, the traders here in London say, is this almost an excuse now for Spain and Italy to not go as far as they might otherwise do in cutting their deficits, in implementing austerity measures? It was the hugely expensive task and difficult task of trying to stop the oil spill, then trying to clean up after the oil spill, trying to help people who live and work in the Gulf of Mexico region regain some of their livelihoods. There is no one home at the mansion in North London owned by Colonel Gaddafi's son Saif. It's said to be worth around 12 million euros. And the estimated cost to the UK economy of cybercrime is £27 billion, $40 billion a year, and it's rising fast. Despite the circumstances, business is still being done. Residents are keen to maintain the feeling here that life goes on, and so this is what passes here for the High Street. Prime Minister David Cameron says the UK will do everything in its power to hunt down and bring to justice those responsible for the beheading of David Haines. What that means in terms of any British military response in Syria and Iraq remains unclear. Olly Barratt, Rudow at Downing Street. This crisis will eventually lead to independence. And they want their politicians to be working to that end in Baghdad.
And from London, Olly Barratt, reporter for Feature Story News and International News Service. Mr. Barratt, did anything of substance at all happen today involving President Obama?
Well, I guess that depends, Bill, if you count.
Prince William and Catherine certainly wanted to be portrayed as a normal royal couple. Is that right, Olly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, they're not a normal couple, are they? Compared to you know, you or I, they're extraordinary in many senses. They are one of the most famous couples in the world. All of that said...
And the conditions for both sides are brutal. At the moment, it's around about 46 degrees. Back at a temporary Peshmerga base behind the front, the commander shows us which territory he controls and which is in the hands of ISIS. The other thing to factor in to all of this is that referenda are notoriously difficult to predict with polling, partly because they are much rarer events, partly because you don't have a precedent to rate them against. You know, there wasn't a referendum in Scotland recently on which you can judge people's voting habits. Xi Jinping's visit comes at an opportune moment for François Hollande. Polls show record levels of unpopularity for the French president, and part of that unpopularity is because of France's economic woes. Unemployment in France remains over 10% and it rose in February according to figures released with President Xi in town. If you can hear me, then Spanish fans are very much getting down to celebrating here in Kiev. You can probably hear behind me the very loud fireworks which are going off all around the city now. I'm just above the fan zone in the centre of Kiev, where many of the Spanish fans are now gathering, having left the Olympic Stadium, and those that didn't have a ticket for the Olympic Stadium are gathered here anyway, and so it's essentially turning into one big party.